Hi, my name is Danielle. I'm a local Kaszazz consultant in Tassie, and I've been doing some things with my Ezy-Press this month, and I'd like to share some with you. This is the card I'm going to show you how to create today, using some of the punches and also an embossing plate that I've made myself. This is you can see the image in the background here. This is using one of our stamps. So we're not going to start with the Ezy-Press today. We're going to start by creating our embossing plate. Now, because we have so many different stamps, this is our flourish. All our stamps are exclusive to Kaszazz, and I thought, well, I like our stamps so much, let's see if I can create a plate that's going to be able to use those in my embossing. So I'm getting my puff static pillow. I'm just going to rub that over my paper. This is just our A5 white cardstock cut in half, but you could make any size die that you wanted. If you wanted to make an A4 die, because our Bellish Ezy-Press is A4, you could do that. And by using the puff static pillow, it just stops the embossing powder sticking where we don't want it. Using our perfect medium, and I'm inking up our stamp, stamping that on. I'm just going to use some pistachio embossing powder. It doesn't matter which embossing powder you use, as long as it's not a thick one, because I found that didn't work. Pour it all on. This one has actually been retired, so I had some left over, so I'm just going to use that one. Now you'll see, because I've pushed it a little bit hard, you can see some little dots there. Just going to grab my brush and get those off, because that's not part of the image that I want. Okay. I'm going to get a heat tool and I'm going to heat emboss that. And you notice it starts to change in colour slightly, and it stops being powdery and goes to that nice set embossing powder look. Now, while this is still wet and still hot from the heat gun, I'm going to pour some more embossing powder on. So we pour some more embossing powder over the top. That means we don't need to re-ink our stamp and try and line it up. So there, we've got more embossing powder on. I'm just going to brush off those little dots. Because the paper is hot, those little dots tend to stick, even though we have used the puff static pillow. So you just need to brush them off. We're going to heat it again, and we're going to put on 4 layers of embossing powder, and that will give us a nice raised image ready to emboss. Okay, so there's our 4 layers of embossing powder, and it's still a little bit wet, it'll be tacky to touch, so we just set that aside to dry. If you were doing, like I've already created a plate that we're going to use, and there's our plate with all the embossings. You need to do each one of those shapes individually. I did try doing them multiples at a time, but the embossing powder doesn't stay wet and hot, so you need to do each one. But once you get the hang of it, I found it took me hardly any time at all. And of course you can do smaller plates and different things that you want. So basically the sky is going to be the limit that you can do. Okay, so now we're going to create the embossed part of our card, which is on our basil purple, using the embossing plate that I'll just show you how to create. So we're going to need our Ezy-Press machine. It's locked onto the table and ready to go. Our base pad A, our rubber mat that we use for embossing, a piece of cardstock. This is cut at 9.5 by 9.5 centimetres. What I'm going to do, I'm going to lay that face down because I want my image to be raised up. I'm going to face it down. Here's the embossing plate that I've made. Sit that down so that it's going to be on top of that piece of paper. Embossing pad B on top, and we're going to roll it through our die cutting machine. Take it off, you'll see that those lovely stamped images that we created with our embossing powder have been raised up, and they've come through our card. Now that's the textured side, which I'm going to use as the right side. You can see the indentation that they've made as well, so it just gives it a perfect look. So now we've done our base of our card, our embossed image, I'm going to show you how to create our little flower. This is done using our Kaszazz punches. This is our daisy punches. There's 3 sizes, a super, a jumbo and a small. And what you want to do, you want to punch out 3 different sizes, 1 of each size. And I've used the petunia, which is this one here, I've already pre-done. And I'm going to use a jacaranda. I always like to hold them upside down so I can see where I'm punching them. to do, I'm going to get our Adirondack paint dabber. Now this is an acrylic paint that's safe to use with your photos, and what I do, I always store mine upside down so that the paint doesn't dry out in that little dauber up here. This is our little sponge dauber at the top that our paint comes through, and if you store it up the right way, it dries out and you've got to clean it every time you want to use it. So store them up the wrong way, so lid down, and then they're ready to use whenever you want. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go around the edges of my flowers with that silver. I've already done my pink petunia flowers, so I'm just going to set those aside to dry for a little minute. And while they're drying, I'm going to show you how I did my little love word. This is stamped on petunia basil, and it's done with its embossing, like we did to create the embossing plate, but we're only going to use one layer and we're going to use silver. Okay, so here's a scrap piece of the petunia that I've got. I'm going to use the puff static pillow again, rub it all over. This just takes the static off, so if you've got fingerprints and that sort of thing, it just gets rid of all of those. I've got a little love word. This is from our newest release, one of our stamp sets. There's some lovely new word sets in our new release, and this is one of them. I'm going to line my image up, stamp it, and just grab my offload sheet and my silver embossing powder. Embossing powders don't actually come in these little containers. They come in a long tube, but I find them too hard to get back into, so I put them in a little container. Much easier. And again, I've managed to push too hard, and I've got some bits I don't want. I'm just going to brush them away. It's really handy to have a brush on hand when you're doing your embossing. Sometimes you get it perfect, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. And again, I'm just going to emboss that. Change. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but it goes from being a powdery to a really nice glossy finish. And there's a little word left. So this is our trimmer, one of our trimmers that we've got. I find it's easiest for trimming up small words because you can see the whole piece. Trim that up. Just leave a nice border around the outside. And then again, I'm going to go around it with our paint dabber, just to add that silver to the edge. Okay, so now we're going to put our flowers together. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with my blue one, my little blue one. I'm going to use my mat and my paper piercer. I'm going to pierce the centre, slide onto my paper piercer, pink. So I'm just going to alternate in colours and go up in the sizes. I'm just going to pause there. I'm going to get my bone scorer and my large flowers. I'm just going to curl the edges, all the little petals, so they're going down. And again, we'll now pierce those ones through the centre. Okay, now I'm just going to get a silver brad, my little silver ones, and I'm going to slide this off my paper piercer and put my brad through that hole. Now my flower's quite flat there, and you'll see on my one it's actually quite raised up. What I did with that, I've used the glossy accents. This is a little tip we learnt at Team Training Day. Bring up our petals and put a little dot of glossy accents under each petal. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that little dot of glossy accents under there, and you're going to go all the way around and do it to all those petals. Then you're going to lift up the next flower and do the same. I did it all the way down and did under the, but I didn't do the two big flowers because they're curved down, and I don't want them to sit up. Okay, so there's our little flower after all the glossy accents are on it. I'm just going to sit that aside to dry. I'm going to go around again using our silver paint dabber. Okay, so there's our piece done. I'm going to attach it to our base card. This is a piece of jacaranda basil cut at 10 centimetres by 20 centimetres. I'm just going to fold that in half. I like to fold a textured side in first. That way it gives a nice crease. Score it with a bone scorer, then I can open it out and fold it, and it's not going to crack. The Bazels and our SB Essentials are really good, they don't tend to crack, but just in case, I like to do that anyway. Then using super tape, I'm going to attach our embossed piece to the front of our card. I've got a little word, a little love word that I've trimmed an edge, and I've put some Magic Mount, some foam tape on the back. So I'm just going to put that on the bottom of our card. Okay, so now I'm going to attach our flower with our foam tape on the back. This is just so that it doesn't go completely flat when we put it on, because we want those petals to stay a little bit downturned when it's on our card. Position that onto our card where we want it. I find it easiest, paper piercer, just to push it down in the centre, just so I don't squash those petals, and just in case they're still a little bit wet from the glossy accents. And there we go, our finished card. Now, I've also been having a bit of a play with some of my other things, stamps, and seeing what I could do. Originally, when I came up with the idea of using stamps for embossing, I stamped the images and then went over them in glossy accents. I don't know if you can see the raised up part of the glossy accents there, but it was very bubbly. So when I embossed it, it gave a nice deep image, but it's all lumpy, and that wasn't the look that I was after. So that's when I went and tried the embossing powder, and I must admit that was thanks to my husband Philip. He suggested, well, why don't you try embossing powder? Smart men. So, but I did do some with the glossy accents that worked quite nicely, some more solid images that weren't so fine, and so that's the result of that one. And I also did another glossy accents one. This is the same image I've stamped twice. On this one, I've gone around the actual image area, and so that's what that looks like when it's embossed, very similar to the image. And this one here, I actually went in the spaces, in the white, because you can't stamp that image, so I thought I wonder what that will look like. And I really quite like that one. It's a very nice little image that you can use to embellish something. So that was, I was really happy with that. And I decided to do a gecko from one of our Australiana stamps. And there's the textured side of him. I think I like the indent side better on the non-textured side. He just came out beautifully. So I can't wait to use him on a project. And then, because I love tigers, I decided, let's go with a really intricate stamp. And again, this was my husband's idea. He said, well, just try it. So I did. So that was my embossed image. And this is how he turned out on the textured side. I'm like, I don't know. But flip it over, and on the non-textured side, he looks much better. So I decided to do it with non-textured side being outwards. And I really like how he's turned out. He's just stunning. So I'm really pleased that I had to play around with my stamps and my embossing powders, and I'm able to now emboss basically anything through my die cutting machine. All my stamps, I just need to emboss them first. It does take a bit of extra work, but it's well worth it. I hope you've enjoyed my videos today. I really enjoyed sharing the projects with you and the new techniques that I was able to play with this month. If you have any more questions, you can post them at the bottom of the YouTube video. You can contact me via my blog, www.danielleskaszazz.blogspot.com. If you have any questions for Kaszazz, you can contact them on 1800-649-191, and they can put you in touch with a local consultant. Or you can visit their website, www.kaszazz.com, and they've got lots of information on there, and you can get in touch with a local consultant and go from there. Thank you very much for watching my video today.